Hello, I'm live, I think. Hi. I'm going to just chat for a sec, so we'll relax for a few minutes while folks join the feed. Um, I hope you're all as comfy as I am. It's below freezing in Columbus, Ohio, and we have about 2 inches of snow on the ground. But Daisy and I were snuggly. As soon as she heard my voice, she jumped off the bed. This is not Daisy. That's her friend. Daisy will be back to purr in my lap here in a minute. And we're surrounded by poems and pillows. I've never done one of these before, so I hope that you're enjoying your evenings, maybe making a meal and relaxing. I don't mind you sort of coming in and out, as we often do, at least mentally during poetry readings. I'll begin here in a few minutes. I might maybe starting, oh, Anna, hi. Anna just joined us. She's in charge of Poets in Pajamas. I don't own pajamas, obviously, although I do have a really cool pair of pajama bottoms on, snuggly little fuzzy socks. But let me tell you a little bit about who I am. My name is Kathy Fagan. I've got 5 books of poems, most recently Sycamore with Milkweed. I teach the MFA program at The Ohio State University. I teach undergraduates and graduate students. And I've been there for a very, very long time. I pretty much began my career there and likely will end it there. I live here in Columbus, Ohio, with my husband and my kitty. And I am ready to read you poems tonight on this chilly night. And if you're joining me from California, hello. I'm hoping that I'll have some family join me from there. I've got a brother and sister-in-law in California and a nephew in Oregon. So that will be exciting. I sort of feel like I'm on Romper Room or something and looking into the camera saying, I see Vicky, I see Jacob. Anyway, I can't see you, but I hope that you can see me and that all is well with everybody. Hi, Steve. I see Steve's there. Okay, I'm gonna get going here in a second. Once again, I'm Kathy Fagan, and I'm delighted to be in bed reading to you, which is a really weird thing. I wanted to thank you, Anna Black, for organizing and advertising this event. And please join Poets in Pajamas for the remainder of 2019. They have lots of terrific readers on the schedule, some friends of mine, a couple of students of mine. I also want to say thank you, and I hope this is appropriate, to Sundress Publications and Erin Elizabeth Smith and Firefly Farms. These are some of the hardest working people in Poe business. And I spent a heavenly week writing and feeding sheep at Firefly Farms in Tennessee. A year ago, a little over a year ago. I love you guys. It was just such a wonderful, incredibly productive time. So thank you for that. I'm going to start us off here in a second with a poem from Sycamore, my 5th book, which I cannot believe is 2 years old this month. Thank you, Milkweed. This is a book about the devastating end of a long relationship during a brutal winter. And in fact, as I mentioned earlier today, we have more snow here on the ground in Ohio, but I believe spring is near. And Sycamore too moves from winter to spring. So I'm skipping to the end. I'm skipping to the end of Sycamore, and I'll read you a slightly more hopeful poem. We don't need to, we can spare ourselves the loss and the grief tonight, as well as we possibly can. This is a poem called Perpendicular. Here's Daisy. Hi. It would have been a fine path for a lizard to cross, but I saw none. Brambles and sweetbrier grew on the town side, poppies and wild grasses on the river. Too hot for birds, the ducks were out, in water and mud, and frogs were out, by the hundreds, it seemed, saying, way, way, in their deepest voices. It was beautiful there, but I'd seen beauty and its opposite so often that when warmth broke over my skin, I remembered winter, the way fresh grief undoes you fully awake. I asked my young friend, when she turned 2, what she would serve at her birthday party, and she said, tofu and cupcakes. When she was 3, and I was very sad, she called and said, what are you doing? Picking flowers? She talked in poems, like she was dreaming all the time, or very old, Virginia Woolf. More often in the first world, one wakes from, not to the nightmare. When I dreamed I lost my love, I willed myself awake because I would not survive the pain again, even dreaming. Which is responsible for that, Mercy Doctor? The conscious sun. I want the poppies picked, and I want the poppies left where they grow, like looking through the window of a moving train at someone walking up a road lined with poplars, and being someone walking up a road lined with poplars. The train and the trees, a shower of petals and bees, sun on glass, and the train perpendicular to the road, things entirely themselves, arriving in the deep, double shadows of the grass and passers-by. Okay, on to new poems, and this is the scary part. These are most, except for one, they're all unpublished and they're all very new. They're from a new manuscript that's nearly ready to go. And I think this next poem might be the title poem of the new manuscript. It might require you to reach back to an art history class you took once, but otherwise, I don't think any explanations are necessary. This is called Bad Hobby. From his pocket, my dad pulls a roll of wooden toothpicks bound with a rubber band. We're driving to the VA to have his toenails trimmed, as we do every 3 months. A standing appointment, I used to say to him, but he no longer gets the joke, asking only why I can't do it myself. And why won't I? I've catheterized him twice, but can't bring myself to tend his feet, so like mine, wide with high arches, ballerina feet, my mom called them, none of us dancers. Now that he's lived with me for almost as long as he lived with her, I'm beginning to look like Mom, pissed. The podiatry techs are always good-natured, thanking Dad for his service, raising their voices when I remind them he can't hear. The big toenail on his left foot looks to be made of horse hoof. They cut and file but never hurt him. Some vets smoke outside the building, waiting on rides. Don't ever smoke, Kath, Dad says. It's a bad hobby. Scribbling his words, forgetting our ages and both our pasts. The toothpicks he saves and reuses, even when broken, he calls a bad hobby. And the drinking he was once well enough to do. Vets here age out at Korea. Most are Vietnam, Gulf, Iraq, Afghanistan. Without a draft, many of us soon won't know any personally. Only the poorest of us serve it. Like sports, the art of war holds little interest for me, though both are everywhere on display. And in theory, I get it. Offense, defense, spectacle, competition. The Renaissance painter Uccello was commissioned by a nobleman to paint the famous triptych of the Battle of San Marino, a skirmish, really, between city-states fought by mercenaries. More than the birds he was nicknamed after, he loved linear perspective, using mathematics to create a three-dimensional effect. The work hangs in 3 European countries now, in keeping with its divisive history, and is considered Uccello's masterpiece. Painted with egg tempera on poplar, it reminds me of the tarot with its broken staves like toothpicks and sexy horses. The gold leaf's intact on the bridles, but the silver of the soldier's armor has oxidized, darkening to ghostly shades. My mother's hobby was painting, is how I know. Uccello's daughter, a Carmelite nun, was described by Vasari as a daughter who knew how to draw. None of her work survives. Hobby derives from a Latin diminutive for horse, from which we get hobby horse, as in one man's sport, another man's war. On the other hand, habit is defined as a sustained appearance or condition from habe, meaning I have, hold, keep, known in some cases as hard to break or more useful broken, a spirit, a promise, a horse. This little poem is titled with the first words of its first sentence, and it's loosely modeled on Cole Swenson's strategy in her beautiful book Gravesend, of moving from title to first sentence and deploying in that first sentence the word ghost. My mother is not a ghost. She doesn't visit or haunt. I'd like to dream of her, but do not. Instead, she leaves me things, a string of green Mardi Gras beads in the parking lot, a gold tone mispa coin, a shiny mandala freed of its earring. Things a magpie might pick up, I pick up, knowing unquestionably they are gifts from her, the alchemy all mine, as if we were girls together at the mall, festooning ourselves in jewelry, the kind that's alive, saying, that looks so good on you. Our faces in such bright agreement among the reflective metals, I can no longer tell which one of us is alive. And of course, I had to write a little poem for my father too, although the word ghost does not appear in this first. My father raked leaves into stacks much taller than I, and let me leap into every one, like bursting the sun into pieces. The scrape of his rake, the way leaves cushioned and cut, their old book smell. A word can't gild the spangle of his ungloved hand, either my laugh or his, more already was. It was what we understood of love that brought me up in the tumult. I'm not sure that younger people in the audience will get the references in this poem, but I hope it sort of doesn't matter. It's called What Kind of Fool Am I, which is named after the song that will be referenced in the poem. I'm not yet old enough to see everyone as the ghost of someone else, but I'm old enough to do the math. In 1962, Anthony Newley wrote and starred in the hit musical Stop the World, I Want to Get Off. Mom played the soundtrack so loud and so often, a neighbor left an anonymous note saying, "Stop the record, please turn it off." Years later, when I heard Bowie's Tremolo, I thought it had to be Newley. Turns out everyone copied him. Most are dead now. Mom taught me by example the trundle bed approach to housekeeping, i.e., the appearance of order. Deep cleaning was saved for another day, like our own feelings, which were best bought, eaten, drunk, smacked, fucked, or played on the turntable loud enough to drown out the crying. My house is clean and orderly both. I have learned to use like against like for marks and stains, protein for protein, oil, unguent for unguent. It is wrong to think that we are unlike others. As a little girl, I could belt the refrain, "Why can't I fall in love like any other man?" It is wrong to think that we are not. Newly dyed, playing Vegas. Spotlights looked smokier then, bleaching what was lit in them, like our security lights in rain, under which, when tripped, one is unable to identify who you are or what, while all you see at the edge of your world is dark. Okay, so I'm going to read two more poems. Well, actually 3 more poems before we close. But I understand that there can be a long delay between the audience member types a question and when I see it to reply. So if you have questions, feel free to sort of type them in while I read these last 3 sort of brief poems. This is called The Rule of 3. One of the first I learned was the Trinity. 3 persons, one God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, nay ghost. Then I started writing JMJ on all my homework and tests, for good luck, but also because my ballpoint's blue ink looked pretty beside the paper's purple ink, like the inside of a clamshell when I teared up or squinted from the smell. Sometimes the sheets were wet and curled like petals reeking of gin, which is why it was called spirit duplication, after the non-flammable alcohol used in the process. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph is what the 3 initials meant. I draw from the descending caret of the M and think of Mary, the mother, and of the other Mary, not, weeping at the limp feet of the crucified Jesus. Where was Joseph, I wondered, but never asked. We seemed to pity him a little, for reasons I couldn't name. Father, who was both my father and a son, and soon to be the son of his father's ghost. When my grandmother was dying, she asked her only child, my mother, to go with her. Mom waited decades to obey, but she finally went. Together in one grave now, they are 2 Marys, with the Jesus of their most solitary prayers, petals littering their one stone's 4 corners. Being motherless, like being childless, is both good and bad, I think. And it is a third thing, too, that is neither of these. Okay, 2 more. Wisdom. How often can you pass a photo of your family thinking, these faces look familiar, and not find yourself ridiculous? I sized the pricey handmade paper I'd been saving, the one with gold detail, to map the picture, too old to fit anything store-bought. My mother, barely a teenager, her mother, maybe 35. I'd guess they're in the Catskills, a vacation favorite in the 40s with the Irish, a joke in the 80s, desirable again today. For once, they look not angry. Nana proud, Mom her beloved and loving child. In this, they are and are not themselves, as I was when they lived, believing myself, as children will, the focus of their every thought. They fought so long and hard, I half expected Solomon to wisely intervene. If he ordered me split, they'd have to quit. Not a single photo of the three of us exists. And the final poem, called School. These days, just before dawn, I find myself asking Mom if I could stay home from school. I teach school now, and Mom is dead, but when I was a kid and said I didn't want to go, she wouldn't make me. She'd pass a cool on my forehead and get on with her day. Sometimes we'd nap together, but mostly she went to her job and I'd be alone all day. I don't remember what I did, and she never once asked me, never once asked why I wanted to stay home, and so I didn't ask myself. Have trusted me, or not much cared, which may be trust's result. I stayed home because some days it felt perilous to be seen, and other days it felt perilous not to be. And these mornings, it is so much both that I do not tell my students or family because I think they must trust me, and because I think they don't much care whether I'm alone all day with them or not. Okay, so now, if there are questions, I am ready to read them, and I'm told that there can be a significant delay. So I'm looking to see if there are questions, and I don't see any yet. As you can probably hear, oh, there's so many sweet people joining. I'm so happy. As you can probably hear with this new manuscript, which is in essence finished, but just not organized yet, between teaching and caretaking for my dad. I haven't had a chance to do that yet, but soon, this spring, and spring will be here shortly. It's primarily, I think, about being a child and also being childless. It's also about various kinds of predatory activities in nature and in families and among, well, with the environment, between us and the environment, that kind of thing. What else can I tell you? Any questions? I'll answer anything. As I tell my students, I'm completely indiscreet. I'll answer any and all questions if you have them. What else can I tell you? I could read another poem, maybe? I don't know. One more quick poem. One I don't usually read. Perhaps. I'll read Heads. It's really, really, not Heads. How We Looked is the one I'll read. How we looked didn't matter for once, because we were flying. The crows we were clothed in took a running thick, and that was all. Tooled doors opened, and waxy air lifted us on its currents. And though the jeweled light was dim, we could tell the faces we were seeing were beautiful, each with a mouth and voice. And there was no doubt then, as our chins and our rib cages, our wrists and our knees rose, that what mattered was that we obey for once. And when the voices said, look up, though rain fell in our eyes, we did. Okay, we've got quite a writing process. And have I always enjoyed writing poetry? There are two different questions, but I think they're kind of related. So my writing process has changed a whole lot over the years. I used to have to do all sorts of magic tricks and call upon, the gods and goddesses and smoke a lot of cigarettes to make poems. And now I think maybe because I'm so incredibly busy, I make lines whenever and wherever I can. And then I gather them for sometimes days, weeks, months. And when I can put together 2, 3, 4 solid hours of work time, um, it's kind of like, as I said once before, it's kind of like Christmas morning. I look at all these notes and I say, oh, look at all these gifts that I have. And I see if there's some way that I can collage them together. And that's usually not the hardest part of writing for me. The more difficult part of writing for me is revising and forming the lines, which is really, really important to me. And that's really my process, is making lines and seeing if what I have to say, lines, which are also within sentences, strung across the page, have any value to me. And then I figure if they do, and if they surprise me a little bit, then maybe they'll surprise readers too. Yes, I've always enjoyed writing poetry. I come from a working class family. I'm first generation college, and yet my grandparents, my grandfather on my mother's side, read poems, wrote poems. You know, the Irish are typically very verbal and great readers, and he was too. My mother was also, and I think they instilled in me a love for reading, and I wrote poems and plays and stories when I was a little girl, but I didn't think that I could like be a writer. Like that was not going to be in the cards for me. And then lo and behold, I went to school for journalism. I was lucky enough to get in, worked my way through school, and then decided, you know, that journalism was not my calling, but I did want to be a writer, and poetry was it. I had some really lovely teachers, Philip Levine, Mark Strand, Larry Levis, some wonderful teachers. Past that came into play as I worked on this manuscript then. Oh my gosh, Anna, yes, absolutely. I've been lucky enough, really incredibly fortunate to have a marvelous therapist for the past 9 years. And she has helped me to not only reckon with the past, but to understand it and not be ashamed to talk about it and feel about it and abide with it. And that's all very so in some ways I think the work is becoming sort of a closer and closer to creative nonfiction. Maybe it's creative non-poetry, perhaps. I'm using many of the strategies and techniques that my creative nonfiction colleagues are, and I'm reading an awful lot of creative nonfiction, but I can't give up that right-hand margin. You know, I love the line. I just adore the line. Are we done? Any more questions? It's really nice. Again, thank you to Erin, who hosted me at Firefly Farms a couple years ago. I cherished my time there. And thank you, Anna, for hosting the series. And thank you, everybody, for joining tonight. I hope you have a marvelous spring. Hugs. Bye.